So welcome back to Third Rate Content. Today we're in the northeasterly Shropshire town of Hodnet. It's packed with history, mystery, folklore, ghost stories and legends. So buckle up and I'll see you out here.
Hodnet's history goes right back to the Bronze Age. A burial site was discovered during construction of the bypass in 2002.
Look at that traditional thatched roof. Been doing thatched roofs since at least the Saxon era. Yeah, when I was driving up here to Hodnet, it was absolutely peeing down, and I was cursing my weather forecast app for telling me it was going to be dry. Oh, look at my red nose. It is cold though. We arrived and parked, and it's got dry and sunny. So all I can say is thank you, and thank you weather app. I'm not going to curse you now.
According to Wikipedia, the Anglo-Saxon settlement, which had a chapel, was the centre of Hodnet, as it was pronounced in those days. That's actually not far off how I pronounce it today, funnily enough. And we're just in the fine timber-framed centre of Hodnet. Buildings are absolutely beautiful. Very chocolate boxy. And you do sort of feel like you're in Broken Sword, the video game, if anyone remembers that or knows of it. So quiet and tranquil, but it's like there's something going on just under the surface.
So the William the Conqueror supporter, Roger de Montgomery, had a manor here, and it belonged to Edward the Confessor. This was all after 1066. And Hodnet was recorded in the Domesday Book as, once again, Hodnet.
Yeah, it's a bit sad to see this old butcher. I wonder when it actually closed its doors for the last time. Big part of village life, I imagine, for many years. Once again, according to Wikipedia, Baldwin de Hodnet built a motte and bailey castle in about 1082, possibly on a moated mound from earlier times. The timber castle was rebuilt in sandstone around 1196, but was destroyed in 1264. Odo de Hodnet was granted the right to hold a weekly fair and an annual market by Henry III in the mid-13th century 1200s, and the village grew to the north and east of the castle by the 12th century church, St. Luke's, which we are going to have a good look at very shortly. St Luke's Church here in Hodnet has got one of the most impressive lich gates I think I've come across so far in our career on Third Rate Content. So, a lot of the technical information, so to speak, on St Luke's Church we've got today comes from Shropshire Churches and Their Treasures by John Leonard, a book I recently came into possession of. And here is a fine view of the three gable ends of St Luke's. You can tell it's January. Christmas trees lying discarded. Well, they look in good condition though still. Some actually fine brickwork on the hexagonal chimney stacks just behind the church. Fragments of grave markers. Obviously they've got broken over the years, but they're still in use. It's nice to see. Yeah, more hopeful signs for the new year and spring. Daffodils just peeking out and starting the renewal of 2024. St Luke's Church stands in the centre of the small town of Hodnet, at the entrance to the famous gardens of Hodnet Hall. It is a stately church, remarkable architecturally for its tower, the twin naves and the long 7-bay arcade and the three gables, as we've seen, of the east end. And this is the gateway into Hodnet Hall, closed for the winter currently. According to Shropshire Folklore by Roy Palmer, once again, St Luke's Church had 3 entrances into the churchyard, one for weddings, one for christenings and one for funerals. Quite unique. Though I don't think there's such a thing as quite unique. Sorry about that. Yeah, and here is the first yew tree, or perhaps the only one, in the churchyard here at Hodnet. Looks a pretty big one though. Split into 2. Yeah, it could have been here since the Saxon days, or perhaps even the Bronze Age, when Hodnet was founded. It's been here for thousands of years. And here we're looking at the western tower. It's octagonal from the bottom to the top and is the only such in Shropshire, and it dates from the Decorated era, although its battlements are probably perpendicular. Wow, this marker looks particularly old or particularly weathered. You decide and tell me in the comments if you've got any ideas.
Yeah, we'll see if the church is open. Oh no, it's not. Bad luck. But you don't need luck when you got the keys. You know, it's all well and good moaning about churches being shut all the time, but why don't you do something about it? Or why doesn't third-rate content do something about it? Yeah, I contacted the key holder, and they kindly, Janice, the key holder, they kindly left them in the post office for me. So yeah, we're going in. Let's go. Christmas tree still here, and we're here all alone in the ancient church. So, Hodnet, its name origin comes from the old Welsh or Brythonic language, and it actually meant pleasant, or means pleasant valley. It's a very uncommon example of a pre-Norman place name in Shropshire. St. Luke's stands in the centre of the small town of Hodnet, very close to the gates, as we showed you, for Hodnet Gardens. We'll come back perhaps in the summer and do a video when it's open on those. But this is the window of, well, that is associated with our Holy Grail Quest and with the Holy Grail in general.
So, Thomas Wright, who we talked about in our previous Holy Grail Quest video, the Shropshire antiquarian, had this very window designed and fitted at St. Luke's, the Grade 1 listed church in Hodnet. The historian and Arthurian legend expert Graham Phillips, whose books include The Search for the Grail, was led here from Hawkstone Park following clues in Thomas Wright's poem Sir Gawain and the Red Knight. Of course, Thomas Wright, being a descendant of Fulk Fitzwarren, the supposed possessor of the Marian Chalice or Holy Grail, was left it, and it is said that the poem had a trail of clues that led to the whereabouts. This was followed by Graham Phillips, and after visiting Hawkstone Park, he was led here to this stained glass window at St. Luke's, which was paid for and had fitted by Thomas Wright. This window was fitted in 1855, the very year that Thomas Wright's poem was published. At a surface look, the window depicts the four writers of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. But Graham realised there was something strange about John. It seemed to be a woman. The other Gospel writers are all depicted with beards, whereas the John figure is both clean-shaven and has a decidedly feminine look. What's more, the figure seems to be wearing a woman's gown, which looks to be covering breasts. Could this figure holding the chalice, the final clue to the cup's whereabouts, actually be a thinly disguised Mary Magdalene? And directly above the figure's head was the image of the eagle. Was the Marian Chalice hidden in the eagle statue in the White Cliff Caves at Hawkstone Park? Graham returned to Hawkstone, and hopefully we'll be heading there at the earliest possible when it's open opportunity.
Yeah, and what's more mysterious, strange, and a little bit scary, especially as I'm in the church on my own, is that in 2006, two mystery clad in black Italians were in the church on their own, and they damaged the wall underneath here looking for the Holy Grail. Nobody knows who they were, whether they worked for an organisation or whether they just took it on themselves to come to Hodnet and desecrate a church. But it just goes to show how seriously people are taken Hodnet and Shropshire as a location or a step on the way to finding the physical chalice of the Holy Grail. It's quite remarkable, really. And here we are on the third rate Holy Grail Quest. But we are not going to do any damage to anything. As I've said before, we respect England, old England and Britain, but we're just here to show you the interesting... I could hear some noises in here actually, but I'm not scared. I'm not scared of ghosts. I ain't afraid of no ghosts. But yeah, it's just to show you the Holy Grail Quest. I can really hear something.
The twin naves of St. Luke's are divided by an arcade. The two eastern bays have an original decorated octagonal pier. The rest of the arcade dates from the 19th century, probably from the restoration of 1846.
Definitely a bit spooky, but I'm just hoping that noise that I heard before, it sounded like someone was in here with me. And I don't hype things up. I'm not hyperbolic about ghosts and everything. But I hope it was some pigeons on the roof or some birds. This font is thought to perhaps be Norman, though the carvings on it are thought to be done a lot later. They're done in the style of perhaps, Norman or Saxon or something like that. But my book that I use for the research on churches that I recently got from Oxfam, this is the first church that I've come to with that book, says that they were done a lot later. It doesn't say it for certain that they were done later, it believes that they were, but they say that the font is old. Yeah, that is another beautiful memorial to the Hill family, I think. But the Hills obviously put a lot of money into this church and are memorialised here. Several generations, because Hawkstone Park, along with its follies, which we will be visiting when it's open, is very close to Hodnet, and the Hills associated with this part of Shropshire.
The tower opens into the nave, the octagonal tower, by a multi-shafted decorated arch with 6 recessed orders of alternating wave moulds and sunk camphors. All of the decorated windows in St. Luke's are of the Victorian era. In 1870, a mortuary chapel, the Heber Chapel, was added, providing the third gable to the east end. And this is Blanche Heber in the Heber Chapel, recumbent effigy on a tomb chest by Reginald Cholmondeley of Condover.
Yeah, just watched Ghostbusters 1 the other day, and I bought actually Ghostbusters, the latest one. Is it? I forgot what it's called, don't watch that yet. But yeah, I ain't afraid of no ghost. because, you know, we are all sort of ghosts walking around and breathing, but just ghosts in the post.
Of course, Bishop Heber was rector here from 1807 to 1823 and the author of well-known hymns. He left Hodnet to become Bishop of Calcutta and died there 3 years later. His descendant, Algernon Heber Percy, is the patron of the living and resides in Hodnet Hall as of 2002 when the book Shropshire, Churches of Shropshire and Their Treasures was published. Many of the memorials here in St. Luke's Church were built by John Carline, stonemason of Shrewsbury, who did basically designed the English Bridge when it was built in the 1700s, and has featured in quite a few third-rate content videos indirectly. The Bear Hotel, which we're going to be talking about in a moment, has supposedly got many tunnels dug out from underneath it. Would like to get a look at them at some point, but not today. We're going to be talking about something else coming up.
Of course, our visit to Hodnet wouldn't be complete without a ghost story. And the ghost story that we've got for you today involves the 500-year-old Bear Inn. So let's find out about it. Yes, the story involves a merchant named Jasper. It is thought that he was a Welshman, and he used to make his way through Hodnet on his way to do business in both Shrewsbury and London at times. He was a jovial, well-liked fellow, and he didn't mind spending his gold, generously in the Bear Inn. Both staff and the residents of Hodnet thought he was a great fellow, very good company, basically a laugh, and it was well liked by the community. They liked to hear of Jasper coming to Hodnet. Everybody would come and have drinks, so it was like a knock-on effect. The Bear Inn would do even well when Jasper was in town, but unfortunately it ended in tragedy and a kind of betrayal, really, because Jasper made a visit one night to the Bear, looking bedraggled and very distressed. Jasper had lost all of his money in London on wrong deals and on the stocks. Everything had gone wrong and he was penniless. He'd had to walk back the many, many miles from London. His shoes were worn out, his clothes were ruined, and so, just like his finances, he basically petitioned the licensee or the landlord of the Bear Inn if he could have a room for the night and a hot meal to set him up for him as he walked home. But unfortunately, the landlord was a hard-hearted fellow, not a very nice man, no Christian spirit, and he said no. As long as he had no money, he was not welcome in the Bear Inn, and threw poor Jasper out into the street. He liked him when things were going well, but not when they weren't. Basically, the man, the innkeeper, was what I would call an arse. A miserable, uncharitable arse who got his just desserts, in my opinion. But anyway, poor Jasper was cast out into the winter streets. It was snowy and he only had a thin coat on his back. Nobody knew what happened to him that night. But the innkeeper, an hour or two later, went into the back. The mood had lowered in the inn. Obviously, the locals of Hodnet felt guilty that they didn't back up what was their friend, or offer him to pay for his room, or offer him food, or, you know, let him stay at their places. The innkeeper went out the back to get something, and then the next thing, there was a terrible scream. Somebody went to check what was going on, and they found the innkeeper dead just by the cupboards where he kept his brooms and barrels of ale. He looked like something terrible had happened to him. He had a grimace on his face, but he looked lifeless, and a doctor was called, and he confirmed that the innkeeper, the hard-hearted arse of an innkeeper, was dead. The innkeeper's funeral was the very next day at St. Luke's, and as the inhabitants of Hodnet made their way to the neighbouring St. Luke's church, Jasper was found dead in a nearby bush. But what was strange about his body was that he had a smile on his face, just like in life. His body lay lifeless, but he had that jovial look on his face. His eyes were actually open. So that very day, Hodnet didn't just have one funeral of the hard-hearted arsehole of a innkeeper. They also had the funeral for their friend, the jovial Jasper the merchant, who fell on hard times.
Because the ghost of Jasper is said to haunt the Bear Inn to this day, although he is meant to be a very good-natured ghost and doesn't give off awful vibes. Nothing has been heard of the innkeeper. He probably went straight to hell or something like that.
And that is the ghost story of Hodnet. But anyway, thank you for watching to the end of today's third-rate content visit to Hodnet. I'm going to admit something to you now. It's my first ever visit to Hodnet. But it's a beautiful little place. The church was lovely. The people that I've met were great. And a big thank you to Janice, the key keeper of St. Luke's Church, for allowing me the visit and us the visit to St. Luke's, the interior. And to Cheetham, the proprietor of the post office here, a lovely fellow who actually handed the keys over to me. So yeah, it's been a great visit, and the weather, it's starting to rain now, but the weather held off for us and it all worked out. So thanks very much. If you did enjoy today's visit, don't think about leaving a like, subscribing if you haven't already. Thank you to everybody who has subscribed. And if you'd like, leave a comment. I do love a good comment, and I reply where appropriate and applicable. So if I don't see you soon, I'll see you 3 times as soon. Third-rate content, signing out. Bye-bye.